Welcome to Sustainable Packaging Podcast with Cory Connors. I'm so excited to have my friend Robert Little on. He is the Sustainability Strategy Lead at GTech, which is a Google company. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too, Cory. How you doing?
So good, man. We've been trying to do this for a few years, and you finally got the big G, as you call them, to approve this. I'm so thankful. It's good to see you, man. It's been a while.
It's good to see you too. And boy, before we start here, I just have to give you a big, warm, thankful sort of shout out here. You've taken what many think is sort of like a niche sort of ivory tower topic. It made it super accessible, relevant, which I think, packaging and recycling is like the gateway drug for sustainability. So I think you've really done a good job sort of making this a big splash. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot. You and I have had the experience of going to several events together and get to know each other at Sustainable Packaging Coalition and different things. But you have a very impressive background, including your time at Yale, where you met my co-worker, Caroline Deloach, or I believe you were there at the same time. I don't know that whole story, but what sparked your focus on sustainability as a career?
Boy, that's a good sort of question, and I don't want to toot my own horn on a background here. Life is a series of lily pads that you jump from one to the next, and it looks conjoined in retrospect, but it's hard to put it together at the very beginning.
I like that.
Yeah, let's see here. I guess I'll sort of start here and talk about my sort of like what's in my sort of resume and background, and then I want to get to the sort of the spark part. So yeah, as you mentioned, I lead sustainability strategy for a technical services team here at Google. I've had sort of a fun sustainability career where I went to school for environmental policy. I've taught high school English in sustainability. I've worked in civil engineering and water management sustainability. And I've also worked in CPG companies with their sustainable packaging as well. I wouldn't consider myself like some sort like it really sounds like this is like a green person sort of like upbringing, but I don't think I would categorize myself that way. I really do challenge that, and I always think that everybody has their sort of sustainability story or the reason why they care about sustainability. They may not call it that though, right? Like everything that I'm wearing here is thrifted or from eBay, and it's not because I refuse to buy brand new things, but because I like to have interesting clothing and save a little bit of money on the side there. Or, in college, I worked at a bike shop and I did a lot of bike repair, not because I sold my car, but because, hey, it's fun to be able to zip around campus and to be able to like actually own being able to repair the things that you have bought.
I love that.
Yeah. And in the sustainability world, there's specifically in packaging, waste management, recycling, right? This is one of these bipartisan sort of themes that just makes honest sense right here. Who hates saving money through resource efficiency, keeping resources above ground, and lowering the overall cost of material by not having to mine it every time you want to use it, right? I think it's something that you could say it has, something has sparked. Everybody has like sort of like a great moment. I really don't though. I just am somebody who has those sort of principles of cost saving, looking fun, and being autonomous.
Well done. Well, you've done a great job with that. And I think you're leading a team that's making a huge impact in the world of sustainability. So it's great to have people like you in this industry that are leading teams that are making positive changes that we desperately need. I'd love to be compared to a gateway drug here at this podcast. That's the first for me. I'm going to clip that for sure. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Yes. I hope people enjoy the show as much as you and I do.
Yeah, let's have fun.
Let's talk about your role there at Google. What's a day look like for you? What's your focus on a day's work?
Boy, that's a great question. The trope is saying no 2 days are the same, but really that is the case here. So my title is Sustainability Strategy Lead, and what does it really mean to drive sustainability strategy at a company like Google? I'd say that zooming out, people are very familiar with Google's tools and products like search and maps and photos and YouTube, but they're not often familiar with the messaging, or the message, I should say, which is we've kind of got a mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And then within that, we actually have a sustainability mission around circularity to maximize the finite reuse of resources across our operations and supply chains and enable others to do the same. And it's that last part that I care a lot about, right? Like, how do you take a company that has many billion user products and such great reach and actually either build sustainability solutions on that infrastructure to help push it out and help solve problems out in the world? Or how do you take these great products that are just so useful every day, and how do you slap on sustainability features on top of that? So I'm sure we'll get into some of the specifics of which tools and products I've been working on. But what it means for me as a sustainability subject matter expert on the team here is really just getting to work with a bunch of really talented engineers and help build products from 0 to 1 that help our users help solve their sustainability challenges. I'll note that, when it comes to the world of sustainability and Google, recycling is the #1 search related sustainability action that we see on our platform. There's a great tool, if you've never seen it before, called trends.google.com, I want to say is the URL, where you can kind of put in any sort of search query and see, hey, how popular is this thing here? You can, I'm sure when the latest Taylor Swift album came out, there was a big spike around the world, but you can
Sure.
restrict it to certain geos, and you can look at different time horizons, and year over year, recycling is one of the #1 sustainability search reactions that always peaks between, Thanksgiving and New Year's, when everybody has so much stuff and their trash bins are full, and they say, "Hey, what do I do with this?" And
Right.
people often come to Google to search for that sort of information. But you asked me about my role. What it really means is getting to work with engineers to help direct and build the sort of tools that will help solve these queries and make the world of sustainability a little more smooth. And specifically, what that means is like working cross functionally, like working with the maps team, the search team, the ads teams, all these different cross functional folks, and saying, hey, where can we actually build these features together? And then within my own small team here, it's, hey, how can we use our small talents, or our limited bandwidth, I should say, and build stuff from the ground up? And my role as somebody who's connected to the industry well is to help make sure that whatever we're doing, we're not doing it in a vacuum. We're talking to the NGOs, we're talking to the businesses, we're looking at those user trends and making sure that we are building things in a really informed sort of way.
Hey, friends, we are going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Please be sure to support them. Are you shipping with recycled corrugated? Think outside the box with 3M tape. 3M packaging tape can help you overcome your recycled corrugated challenges with confidence, making sure your boxes are sealed securely the first time, reducing downtime, and providing consistent performance. With 3M as your partner, you can maintain productivity, achieve cost savings, and turn packaging problems into sealing success. When you use recycled corrugated shipping boxes, think 3M packaging tape. Sustainability starts long before a product hits the shelf. It starts with the spec. That's why brands choose SpecRite, the leader in intelligent specification data management and modern product lifecycle management. SpecRite turns siloed packaging and product data into connected, reliable intelligence so AI can identify waste, optimize materials, streamline supplier collaboration, and accelerate sustainable product design. If you're trying to reduce packaging complexity or meet evolving regulations, it's time for a spec-first approach. SpecRite, the intelligent foundation for every product. Discover more at specrite.com. This episode is sponsored by Lorax EPI, global leader in environmental compliance and sustainability solutions. Lorax EPI empowers businesses to reduce their environmental impact and transition towards sustainable models through innovative software and expert consultancy. Their NV platform supports EPR reporting, environmental taxes, and voluntary commitments, while providing data-driven insights to set ambitious goals and track progress. With tailored strategies and a commitment to transparency, Lorax EPI turns compliance into a competitive advantage. Learn more at loraxcompliance.com. I love what you were saying about how during that time between Thanksgiving and Christmas or a different holiday, whatever you celebrate that time of year, people often have that thought of, wow, what do I do with all this stuff? And I think COVID was that for many, that realization of, whoa, this is a lot of boxes, or wow, that's a lot of things that I don't want to throw in the trash. And I want to actually make sure they're recycled. So I think there was some positive things that came out of that experience for a lot of people of education. And a lot of people use Google for that. I know that for a fact because they will often ask me, what should I do? I'm a startup brand or I'm a startup company and I'm trying to be sustainable with my packaging. And I say, number one, go to the grocery store and see your product, see things like your product that you're looking to make if it is not something unique. And then two, I say, go to Google and search it.
Yeah.
I'd love to know your thoughts on that. And, are there other tools on Google that will help us be more sustainable?
That's a great question. I think you've stolen some of the thunder here. Yeah, like I always say Google Trends is such a fun place to start because,
Yeah.
if I were to start a company or if I were somebody dropped into a company where I'm trying to optimize my packaging for sustainability, I think the trends is a really good sort of area to just explore. Hey, what are people struggling with or what are people searching for here? So you can obviously throw in your product category, your specific product, and see sort of the related queries that folks have there. Again, this is just a public tool that you can go ahead and explore, both for fun and then for sort of informing which directions you want to take. Right? Maybe I have something that is very difficult to open. Right? I would probably start there rather than this is great, but I don't know what to do with the cap. Let's say.
Mm,
So Trends is a fun place to sort of like just get your feet wet here. I think that on a more operational level, one of the things that we've done really well is that we love to sort of like open source the things that we think are going to be valuable to the industry here. I know you've had Miguel, one of my colleagues, on for the packaging team, and we've built a plastic-free packaging design guide that I had the opportunity to be a part of. I think it was last year here. We had set a goal a few years back to have totally 100% plastic-free packaging by 2025, and I was really excited to see us hit that goal a little bit early. And then the question is, okay, what do you do with that journey? Like, this is not a simple thing, right? Especially the really, really nitty gritty parts of a package. I just got my first Pixel phone the other day, actually, and I had the fun of actually doing the unboxing and actually taking off the recyclable sort of like fibrous tape and things like that, and knowing that the entire box I could actually just put in my curbside bin and know that yes, this thing will be recycled. It feels really good. Weirdly enough, to turn off my brain and say, okay, I don't have to worry about that now, as somebody who cares
yeah.
about recycling so much.
I love that. Miguel
But
was
yeah,
such a
so
great guest to have on. So thank him again for me.
I'll
He's
send him my best, and he's just a great
brilliant
guy
guy.
with a great Zoom background. Also, like I'm sorry, I'm in a corporate
Yeah.
office, but yeah. So on a serious note, Miguel did a great job, sort of like sharing just like our journey, what we did, how what was really difficult, what we could tackle first, second, and third. And I think we've had a second edition of that come out as well. So just start there if you're looking to have something that's plastic free. We don't think plastic is the biggest enemy in the world here, but what we do want to have is something that we know for the many different recycling ecosystems that people are a part of globally that will have a much better chance of being recyclable and more circular. I think that I mean you asked about like what other Google tools can we use here. One of the big things that I work on is getting recycling information onto Maps and Search as one of those like bolt-on products that I was mentioning earlier. And then also some of the AI solutions that are hot and rising here. I helped put together a open source computer vision machine learning algorithm called CircularNet that's live on GitHub for recyclers or even just folks who want to take this sort of pre-trained model and have a different application to take off the shelf and hit the ground running and being able to understand identifying where is this material ending up. If you are I could imagine if you are a packager and you want to partner with a material recovery facility that doesn't have that sort of level of analytics, like this is great. Now there's a free tool that you can actually lift and shift on. You could deploy this with a GoPro or some low cost hardware here and actually see what's flowing through a system and make sure like, yeah, this thing is actually going where I want it to go. I think that's a good start there. Any
Yeah.
follow-ups?
Yeah. So I was really excited to learn from you just a few weeks ago when we met in advance of this podcast about how Google Maps had a locator system for recycling drop offs for different materials. I didn't know that. And I think that it's so I use Google Maps every day, like period. And I'm all around the world, as you know, and it's my favorite tool to not be lost. So thank you and your team for creating that. But I didn't know that it also had such sustainability advantages because a lot of people like me want to go to the store and drop off their soft plastics or their PET thermoforms or the things that are not curbside recyclable where they live. So I'd love to know more about that tool and kind of how that came to be, and did it just have a need, and you guys came up with a solution, or tell me more.
Great. Yeah, the genesis is sort of a fun story here where basically we've been working with the world's largest brands and advertisers. And, when Google builds something, we try to not build it just for one specific niche thing, but we try to help everybody with it.
Right.
So the sort of core driving force behind this was we want to have more consumers recycle more and recycle right. And we want to make something that would be globally applicable. The Recycling Partnership puts out great reports for the US here. The state of curbside recycling in 2020, and they had one last year in the 2024, which I really, really appreciated. Illuminates the fact that we have like 9,000 different recycling guideline communities here in the US. Just think about what we have globally. What if you don't have recycling guidelines here?
Right.
So when we were looking at like, okay, where do we sort of focus? We thought, hey, let's focus on where we know there is discrete infrastructure where people are actually managing drop off locations, and we could actually map specific categories to those drop off locations. Another really big, important fact, I'll butcher the numbers, I'm sure, but is that,
It's okay. We'll
here,
Google it later. Yeah.
you can definitely Google it. But, like, why are recycling rates for packaging low around the world here, or certainly here in the US here? One of the number one reasons is just access, right? Like, not everybody has access to a curbside bin. Not everybody has access to a free curbside bin or as part of their sort of municipal service here. There's actually a lot of the country and a lot of the world that has just drop off infrastructure.
Hmm.
So when we built this sort of like bolt on solution, we looked on having addressing basically that sort of part of the market here, both like things that are actually curbside recyclable if you have it, metal cans, glass bottles, plastic bottles, things like that, but also like the things that are really hard to recycle, right? The things that you actually don't want to put into your black bin, your trash bin, nor do you want to put them accidentally, I'd say, in the recycling bin, right? We want to keep our film plastics
That's it.
separate, or our household hazardous waste, or our electronics, or light bulbs, or ink cartridges, things like that.
Batteries. Yeah. Right.
And battery, yeah, 100%, exactly, batteries. We want to make sure that those definitely go to drop off as a safe disposal sort of method.
Dangerous. Right.
I think the other sort of fun thing, just so like, where did we nest this tool here? Google has, if you're a business owner, they have what you call different business attributes. And this is something that it makes Google Maps really useful, right? What's the address? What are the store hours? Very specific things to like, does this offer wheelchair accessibility? Does this have vegan options? Things like that. And we thought, oh, we could just add recycling infrastructure into this sort of like pre-drilled hole, if you will. And the good news about that is like, the fun part about working at a company like Google is that you get to flip the light switch on globally and have everything, everywhere all at once sort of turn on here. So it's been really fun to do that, to watch that feature grow, to have folks actually utilize that and actually find the right place to bring their materials so they have a much better chance of being responsibly recycled instead of either contaminating a blue bin or much worse, creating a fire or a hazardous sort of situation.
I love that. It's such a big opportunity to make such a large impact on the world. I think the last number I heard was 50 million US households don't have access to curbside recycling. And that's how many people live in a household. I think the average is 2 and a third or something like that. That's a lot of people. That's very sad to me that they don't have access. So this tool will be incredibly valuable and will continue to be helpful for the community here in the U.S. and beyond, like you've said. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point that, me in a city, I forget, like, I've got an uncle who lives a few hours away in Central California, and he takes everything, trash and recyclables, has to truck them out. And so this is a fun tool. I can say, yay, you can find the right place to bring your things. Um,
Hopefully there's some standardization that comes with extended producer responsibility laws nationally and globally eventually. I mean, there are companies and countries that know how to do it well. Why don't we replicate those things? That's my thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the fun sidebar there is I had the opportunity to go travel to British Columbia this past summer with a group of legislators to honestly just see how in British Columbia EPR is done. They have many more categories of materials under EPR legislation. I got to go meet with Canadian policymakers, and I love just seeing how matter of fact and sort of like, oh yeah, of course we bring our paints and hazardous waste to the like. Why would you not do that? Like to have it
Right.
be like the standard operating procedure rather than this very big Herculean effort. And I think what I saw and observed is making categories under EPR really well informed, really convenient, just integrated into the way that we live our lives and not this onerous sort of extra task is something that I really admired. My favorite moment of this trip was talking to, I guess I can't name who they were, but a policymaker, and we were asking sort of how do you manage or like how do brands manage and how do like the companies that are producing this manage their materials. They always kick and scream when we sort of like try to propose this sort of stuff, and the policymaker and Ken was like, well, I don't care, they'll figure it out, like that's
Yeah.
their problem, but they figured out how to put it on the market, they'll figure out how to take it back and recycle it, which
Love that.
which is a fun, yeah,
That's right.
a fun story there.
Well, that leads right into my next question. I was kind of hoping for some wisdom from you. What should consumer brands be focusing on with their packaging? As it, other than like Google's paperization of their packaging, which was incredible. Miguel shared that story really well. What do you like if a brand came to you and said, "Robert, what do we do? Help us out."
That's a good question. I don't claim to be a packaging engineer, but it's something that I do have sort of a curiosity for. I think the zooming out and like taking a step back, I think it was Tom Zacky's book, The Role of Packaging, in 2019 or 20. He put this book out where he kind of crowdsourced a bunch of chapters written by packagers from different companies.
Really
Highlights a
like that
really,
book. Yeah,
really important narrative, which is, what is the role of packaging? Well, it's to get your stuff from point A to point B. That's a given, right? We kind of forget about that. And then for many years, it was okay. We want to get it from point A to point B and make it, really fun to look at, really appetizing, or
right,
sell the thing that's inside of it. Great, fine. And then we brought in some sustainability, right? We said, hey, we want to have your package be super, durable, interesting, and lightweighted, which is great, right? I want to have packaging that is really easy to transport and minimizes the environmental footprint of bringing it from point A to point B. And it's only very recently, right, that we've gotten to this component where it's like, oh, and I want it to be circular as well. I do not envy the folks on the packaging team that are like, wait a minute, which one is it? Which one do I have to optimize for at any given time? So I just want to acknowledge that sort of first here, because what I want to answer is, of course, somebody who cares about circularity and keeping resources in use, I do want to see much more ambitious sort of packaging, or even the lack thereof. There's a great case study that we put out with Lush where we had dematerialized packaging. I think it was a great study where we had like bath bombs that didn't even have packaging. Right? You could go to the store and just pick up the thing and use your phone to lens and say, "Hey, what is this? How do I use this? I don't actually need the plastic wrap around this here." So the
brilliant.
need for packaging itself is the first question I would ask. Of course, the second one I would ask is like, okay, how might we put this out here in a more responsible way? For some categories, that means having packaging that is, you know, totally reusable,
Yeah,
keeps kept in the system here. I think obviously I spoke a lot to deciding for recyclability. I think that is just the bare minimum honest sort of choice there. I think a really tough thing, and something that you brought up with EPR, is that for years, like this wasn't part of the conversation of like, hey, like if I'm putting packaging out into the ecosystem, I don't have to be responsible for bringing it back here. And as a result, the folks or the industrial components that were responsible for managing it end of life were heavily underinvested with the tasks that they had at hand, right? And it was then again us as consumers to invest in our municipal recycling systems, or maybe they would have to go ahead and raise capital. But as a result, we're left with very old, outdated infrastructure that is not kept up with the rapid evolutions, by contrast, right, of packaging that we see every year. So I, selfishly would love to see more investment in the recycling ecosystem, because I think that's what we all want here from a sustainability standpoint. And then, of course, like, so what? So you have something that is recyclable, right? If that's where you're going, and you've invested in the system. I think the last sort of component there is really figuring out from the design component, how do I take that material and bring it back into my next life or my next package. I do love looking at paper as an easy example, right? We have much higher recycling rates there, and it's because the actual mechanical process there is a little bit more simple, perhaps, than when we get down to the molecular level chemical recycling, or the costs associated with glass and things like that, and heating up to high temperatures. So
exactly.
it's a very long-winded answer, but I'm saying the classic one is it depends here. But I think I just like to have those conversations as upstream as you possibly can, right? And
Right.
again, citing trends like, where from the consumer angle are people frustrated, or where are they seeing something, by contrast, catching fire, and it's actually really exciting from a sustainability standpoint.
I totally agree. It was awesome to go to a renovated MRF in Boston. They had just spent $22 million
Wow.
updating their MRF with the latest and greatest in AI sortation materials. It was incredible to watch the system work with very few employees. And I think that's important because the act of having to pull trash out all day long is very difficult and can be dangerous too. So this is a job where automation makes a lot of sense. And it's exciting to see that with the right technology and with this, where AI is really making a great impact, in my opinion, is not in silly movies. It's in things like this, where we're actually using the tech to see what's in front of the camera and sort. And it's amazing to see. I'd love to know your thoughts on What are some bright spots? What are some things that you're seeing that you're excited about? I'm sure AI is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely spotted, of course, my my Google/personal sort of interest here. I think the two things I would say are the technology is rapidly growing and innovating, and that's just great, right? From a cost perspective, the better that we can innovate, the more granular data that we can gather, specifically when it comes to the recycling ecosystem, is just awesome. I think that this is historically an industry that it can be very dangerous. It can be very thin margined, and it's an industry that there's not a lot of transparency. And like, do you blame folks in this industry? No, like it's a tough industry and it's underfunded here. So flipping that, the role of data that we're getting from different sensors and the role of artificial intelligence to help identify is bringing a new level of visibility to an industry that we just haven't had before. And I think that's really exciting. I think specifically this is the right time for it with the tailwind of EPR here.
Yeah,
We're seeing, I can't speak for every single program here, but at a very high level, what we want to see is that, or have faith that whatever we're putting in our recycling bins or whatever we're dropping off for recycling is moving through the system and making it to an end market and ultimately becoming a new product or a valuable material or serving some sort of good purpose. And I think that the way that many EPR programs are stipulating, okay, these are the specific categories that have to reach a certain specific recycling rate. How do you measure that? Great. We have these sort of sensors and these new AI tools to actually help do that measurement and that reporting and that sorting, right? There's like the sort of like a watershed moment for this industry, which I think is just,
exactly.
it's really fun and really exciting. That, and, when you start bringing visibility and transparency to an otherwise, opaque industry. I think it's great from the consumer engagement angle as well, right? I think that the
No, I
recycling
agree.
industry has had a lot of, tough press, honestly. Yeah,
I
I'm
agree.
frustrated too. It's tough when you don't have faith that something that you're going out of your way, or you're doing a good action, that you know that the sort of like the end fate will be what you're desiring and whatnot. So the more transparency we have there, I think it helps the actual industry out. It helps the consumer trust, and ultimately it helps our sustainability story of keeping things in use,
Yeah,
which
well
is
said.
is the more important part.
A lot of energy in the industry has been put towards making recycling look bad for some reason, and
Yeah.
I just don't understand that mindset. A lot of gotcha journalism and things like that, where yeah, it's a clickable story, and yeah, I understand that. But let's be positive. I'd love to talk about Project X if we can,
Sure.
or your project at X, I should say, their sortation project. Can we talk about that yet? Is that public?
Yeah, it's always a. I'll keep my lips tight here. But no, it's a really
We won't
exciting
tell
moment because
anybody
we're
that.
we're we're
Yeah,
finally moving out of stealth mode into something that is actually really exciting to talk about here. Yeah, I mean, first on your footnote beforehand, like it is. I think like the bad news sells. I don't like that. If you see me on LinkedIn, I don't have many social media platforms, but I love telling the good stories here, and
yeah,
I'm really hoping to build much more hope and optimism for the good news here, and to
yeah.
kind of flip that narrative here.
You're
You
great at
can't
that.
just do that out of thin air, right? Like you have to actually show the metrics and the technology and the success behind that. And
Right.
that's exactly what new publicly named is Materra is doing
Okay.
here at X the Moonshot Factory. At a really high level, gosh, I mean, like when you look at the different technologies in the waste management industry right now, again, it's this watershed moment of this boom of AI and sensing and transparency and identification, and then ultimately sorting in service of making sure that more recyclable material goes to the recycling sort of folks, and then things that do not contaminate. What's interesting about Materra, or like maybe I can just talk about the industry as a whole here, is like historically we haven't had the kind of sensory technology to be able to see what we want to do here. And what I mean by that is, me as a human eye, or a lot of the even NIR sort of sorters that we have, they are only able to see a certain level of material, and they're only able to see certain pigments and whatnot. And I'm using C as a relative term. This is all, reflecting
Right.
wavelengths and light and things like that. But what Materra does is actually bring sort of a new sensory modality here to actually, you could think of it as almost like seeing a new level of what's in a package, right? Let's see the actual molecular composition of a package, and what does that actually unlock? Well, for one thing, it's not just like we're not just showcasing, okay, I can see a plastic bottle here, but I can say, okay, this is a specific PET bottle with an HDPE cap, and I see some PVC contaminant on there. So it actually gets a much more sort of holistic picture
Incredible.
there. I think for harder to recycle, I don't want to even call it that because I feel like that's a rude term here. But for different materials that have historically had lower recycling rates here, one of the difficult components is like being able to actually identify the very specific sort of blends of a material here. So if you can actually do that and measure it, Materra, which is the project from X, can help do that here. And that's really important when you're optimizing feedstock for specific use cases. I don't want to get too deep into it, but what I'm excited about here specifically is back to this conversation of EPR, right? Like this is great from a profitability standpoint, right? We're otherwise landfilling you know, millions and billions of dollars of otherwise recyclable material to landfill. And now we can actually identify and start bringing them to the right end pathways. And in the same time, we're going to be able to use this sort of technology to help broaden the sort of sphere of what we can identify for extended producer responsibility and showcase the good story of like being able to sort this and being able to bring it to the right end markets.
I love that.
I direct you definitely to X, the Moonshot Factory's website. The website title used to be Circularity Moonshot. I think Materra is on there, like out in the open now. So
We'll put a
I
link
would,
to it. Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
encourage you to take a look. It's fun YouTube videos there.
It's incredible that EPR is going to encourage that technology by collecting funds to pay for it. And then it's going to also encourage that technology because brands are going to be required to use a certain amount of post-consumer recycled material. So all of a sudden the demand for this material is going to spike, we hope, if everything goes as planned and everything works as we hope it will. So I think this is where your Materra equipment and technology is going to just be so valuable.
Right. Let's paint a brighter future here, right? Like
Yeah.
what do you want to see? You want to see a world where, the resources are flowing through our mechanical technosphere like they do in nature, right? Where it's easy to actually have the right sort of like decomposition and regeneration pathways and we're not stifling them. And part of that is really just understanding what's going where, how can I get these materials in the right place? And then how ideally from an economic standpoint, because it always boils down to that, can you actually bend that cost curve and say like, hey, because this material that I'm having is being used over and over and over again, it's going to be less expensive than having to bring it from the ground up and do the whole
I love that.
refining, remanufacturing, all that kind of stuff.
I really appreciate what you said about keeping it above ground. And my friend Russell likes to say, keep those molecules in play.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he's a scientist. He's brilliant, like you. But he just says, these things that make sense to him. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that.
I can see
So,
it.
yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you, sir, for being on. Really appreciate your wisdom and your thoughts. Any last words for the audience before we close this out?
That's a great question. I think that first, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Again, I just can't thank you enough for taking this narrative and making it popular, tangible, interesting, and accessible.
Thank you.
Again, when it comes to sustainability, everybody has something that they do in service of sustainability. It may not be branded that way. It may be for saving money. It may be for having a fun new style or things like that. But I think that you're doing a really good job helping sort of craft those narratives and bring that awareness to everyone.
Thank you.
And I think from a zooming way out perspective, I think that we in the sustainability industry or we in the industry where we're trying to combat a lot of like tricky news and whatnot, it is really tempting to say, well, this isn't working, so it's broken, so I don't want to invest in it. Or like,
Right.
how is that ever going to work? It's going to cost too much money here. And I think that if I were to ask the audience to flip that a little bit more here, I would love to have more people share the good work that's being done. There's so much of it if you look for it. There's so much of it across different sort of like use cases. And I think that, something from a positive psychology perspective that I've adopted is the more good news you're sharing, the better you feel. Like,
I agree.
give it a shot is what I'd say.
I totally agree with that. Yes, I'm tired of the woe is me stuff. Let's be positive.
Well, let's fix the stuff that's broken, right? Like,
let's
sure,
fix
if
it.
things are broken, let's fix it. Let's light a candle, right? Let's not curse the darkness.
Well said. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you.
Great. Thank you, Cory. Take care.